Hello there. I'm here with my twin brother Noah Wallace. He's 17 years old, and I'll ask him a couple of questions. So, Noah, thank you for joining me. The first question I have for you is, first of all, if you could actually, before anything, explain to everyone, what do you think the Jewish narrative means? What does it consist of? What is the Jewish narrative in your opinion?
I think the Jewish narrative is refers to the collective Jewish experience that has characterized our history. It's basically our story and how that's been shaped by our experiences in our long history.
I see. Thank you. So, now we'll go into questions regarding the values you have. So, uh, what has first of all, what is your outlook on life, and how has that changed throughout the years?
My outlook on life is that there's always something positive, I think, to come out of most events. There's uh, usually in my experience a positive perspective on things, and life is more meaningful and more happy, which I think is what everybody wants when you look at things positively. So that's one of my outlooks on life. And um, you asked what has changed my outlook.
Hmm.
Um, I think what has changed my outlook. I think just kind of everyday experiences. Some people look at their lives and they see a bunch of struggles, they see a bunch of problems. So everybody has problems, and it's just a matter of how willing you are to solve them.
Thank you. And in your opinion, which holiday or Jewish tradition instills Jewish values um, in you? So
Uh,
yeah,
um,
or all of them?
I think
You know,
Shabbat
Shabbat.
to
Okay.
me most instills Jewish values because uh, Shabbat is a time when I can observe it. It's a time in which I can nurture my relationships with people. It's a time where I can fulfill what I see as God's purpose and help people and whatnot. So I think Shabbat, because it's kind of a restful time, allows you to focus on being a better person, and in that way it helps me connect to Judaism
Thank you. So, how do you feel closer to God?
during Shabbat.
Anytime. What makes you feel close to God? Is it Shabbat or is it more than that?
I think I feel close to God um, whenever I experience something that seems kind of miraculous or
Hmm.
that seems unlikely. I do. In my Jewish studies class, we've learned about like kind of faith versus reason. So I believe in science as far as it can go, but I think there are some things that science and reason as far as it can go, but I think there are some things in our world that just can't be explained, and I think it's okay to have faith that God exists in that way.
Now, let me add on to that point because you are mentioning there's some things that you can't really explain or you don't know if it exists or not. So, when do you feel most disconnected, not connected to God?
I probably feel most disconnected to God whenever I hear about, read about, see directly some sort of injustice. When I visited Auschwitz, which Treblinka or Majdanek, any of the other camps in Poland and Eastern Europe, I felt very disconnected to God. I didn't feel like God was. God is supposed to be everywhere according to Jewish tradition. I didn't feel like God was at the has ever been at those camps.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So, switching tides here, regarding Jewish traditions, celebrating Shabbat, you mentioned, or enjoying different holidays, whatnot. How are you going to pass those down to your next generation, to your family when you get older, and so
Um, That's a good question. I haven't really thought about that too much. How will I pass down the traditions that I believe in? I think a central part of my own religious experience is that it's very different from that of my parents, that of my family. I've come to it, obviously it's rooted in what my family believes because I've grown up with a lot of those values. But beyond that, I think I've explored and sort of found my own path, and I think I want to set a foundation for my family when I'm older. But I want them also to be able to find what's meaningful to them, what they believe, as long as it's rooted in the core values that I also believe in.
Thank you. So you talked about your family there. So describe the place you come from, which I know about, but
Uh, I come from a nice home. I have three siblings. Obviously, you. Two older sisters. I have great parents, and we have a pretty traditional household, I would say. Belong to a conservative synagogue. And we used to go when we, as a family, a lot more to on Shabbat. We'd go about once a month when we were younger. We observe the main holidays, and I think we keep kosher. I think we identify as conservative Jews. So I think it's the best way to.
Mhm. And is there anything you talked about kind of conservative Jews? I know conservative Judaism talks a lot about modern issues. How do you think you've incorporated modern times into your Jewish beliefs, your Jewish customs and rituals, and the narrative itself?
Right. Well, as I explained earlier, I believe in science and reason as far as it will take me, as far as it takes us. But uh, so I do. I think have to begin with that. I think I have to believe in what is logical, or else existence is very confusing and purpose is very confusing. But um, I would say that in general, my life is kind of, in a way, I guess, kind of secular first, and then whenever secular ideals don't cut it, then it's religious.
And allow me to ask you here then, how has your secular life um, contributed to your Jewish life, and what, in other words, how have you contributed, or what secularly have you contributed to uh, your life that isn't Jewish, perhaps?
I'm sorry. Can you restate? I don't understand the question.
Yeah. So allow me to restate. What contributions have you made to the secular world?
Um, it's still kind of a vague question, but
Uh-huh.
I guess, um, I've, I do community service
Okay,
sometimes.
yeah,
I
yeah,
guess you could say.
that counts.
Um, I, I think just by participating in everything I participate in, I make a contribution to something. I'm not sure if it's a secular world. I'm not exactly sure what that
Yeah,
means, but
probably a non-Jewish world, but so you mentioned volunteering, that counts.
well, but what I was saying earlier is I think my Jewish and secular worlds are pretty integrated. Even if I do have even if I do believe in reason and logic before I believe in
Yeah.
scriptural ideals. So um, I would say they're integrated. So it's hard for me to just say I've contributed this to the secular world and not to the Jewish world. For me, it's kind of like one world.
Thank you. And now allow me to ask regarding faith. Do you have faith? And what do you think, or how can one benefit from knowing the difference between faith and knowledge? Because they're different.
How are they different?
Well, first of all, explain your faith, then explain how can one benefit from understanding that we don't know, for instance, that God exists, but we can have faith that God exists. Explain that.
Okay. Well, I think faith in general is personally, okay, so knowledge, I'm assume means like reason or kind of like things we can prove. I think knowledge is something that makes us feel safe. Makes us when we're certain of things in our world, certain of our existence, certain of who we are. We feel more comfortable. Whenever we don't know what's going on in life, I think that makes us feel less comfortable. So knowledge is an important part, I think, of all human experience. But I think faith is equally important because there are things that don't make sense. And I think a lot of the people in this world, a lot of the cynical and disillusioned, pessimistic people in this world are so because they don't have faith. Regardless of whether God exists, I think having faith offers a lot of benefits just in this world, in our lives, because it sort of continues that feeling of security and certainty that knowledge implies. Because if you don't have faith, you don't it is I think very confusing why certain things are the way they are because we don't know obviously with our own reason.
Yeah. Well, thank you. So that leads me into my final two questions. Number one, What is the significance of Torah and more specifically, or generally for that matter, uh, texts in general? What is significance of that? Do those add to faith, knowledge? No.
Yeah, I think texts, I guess, provide a kind of foundation of how to behave, how to behave in our world, and give us some sort of guide us ethically. So I think that's important about them. Speaking specifically about like the Talmud, what values are most relevant in contemporary society? I think the most
Well,
relevant. Yeah.
let me say I didn't ask that. The question
Oh,
was,
I'm sorry.
what values are most relevant in contemporary society? So we kind of talked about modern times, but in your opinion, what values? Secular values, Jewish values, combination of both, and explain specifically which ones.
Um, well, I don't know. I don't know how to label like this is secular value, this is Jewish value necessarily, but I think the most important values in a society are probably compassion, um, optimism, maybe, and empathy. Because I think in order to improve our world, which I think is ultimately our purpose, to do good, help others, leave the world better than you found it. Try to create equality for all people. I think to do that, you have to understand people. You have to understand their perspectives, their past, their experiences, and you also need to just learn to be nice to people. I think the golden rule is the best, I guess, guide for how to live.
Hey, that's a great way to live. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. So long.